And Tehran has lashed out at Washington after a U.S. submarine attacked an Iranian frigate in the Indian Ocean. The Iranian foreign minister didn't mince his words, vowing revenge.
The U.S. has perpetrated an atrocity at sea, 2,000 miles away from Iran's shores. Frigate Dina, a guest of India's Navy carrying almost 130 sailors, was struck in international waters without warning. Mark my words, the U.S. will come to bitterly regret the precedent it has set.
And I'm now joined by RT India's Ridhima Kedia here in the studio. Ridhima, what is the latest on this attack in the Indian Ocean?
See, the footage released by U.S. Department of Defense clearly shows the exact moment a torpedo had hit the Iranian warship, Iris Dena, causing it to break and also sink very quickly. Now, the video, as seen in the coverage, shows the scale of the attack also, as well as the aftermath, with the Sri Lankan rescue team, only finding oil patches and life rafts upon arrival. So now the sinking of the Iranian warship has brought the war to India's doorsteps. The 87 sailors who apparently died in this particular incident were in fact, returning from an international fleet review in Visakhapatnam on India's eastern coast. Now remember that just a few days before, they were also participating in joint naval exercises which were happening with different navies across India. But US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he is defending American actions. Take a look.
The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated, pick your adjective. In fact, last night, we sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani. Looks like POTUS got him twice. Their Navy, not a factor. Pick your adjective, it is no more. In fact, yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters.
See, the Sri Lankan authorities have said that more than 30 people have been rescued. Several bodies were also recovered, and the injured have apparently been taken to a hospital, a government hospital on the southern port city of Gale for treatment. And it's not just that. In fact, Sri Lankan authorities have also confirmed that Navy had apparently received a distress call from Iranian vessels, and they had alerted the Air Force immediately. And post that, both the Air Force and the Navy joined to collaborate on a search and rescue operation post that. Now, what is more interesting to watch is that another vessel is near Sri Lanka, and Colombo is keeping a very close eye on that. Take a look.
The ship is not in Sri Lankan waters. It is located in the exclusive economic zone. The government and the defense ministry are aware. The government is involved in providing maximum intervention pertaining to the lives of those on board.
So the attack happened in the Indian Ocean. India calls that particular area its strategic backyard. And in fact, the Indian Navy calls themselves the guardian of the Indian Ocean. But United States, obviously, they clearly kept India uninformed about the impending actions. Yeah. And what analysts point out is also a fact that both India and the United States are partners in the Quad, where intelligence sharing is extremely important on developments in the Indian Ocean. And they had not provided any of it. So, meanwhile, in another development, India's Ministry of External Affairs has in fact strongly denied claims of US Navy using Indian ports, and they've also in fact firmly rejected all of those reports, calling it not just baseless but also misleading in multiple manners. They've effectively fact-checked everything and they've clearly firmly rejected the statements made on American news network. Now remember, India has traditionally maintained its position when it comes to anything like India has maintained its non-alignment stance and has always, advocated for dialogues and diplomacy when it comes to situations of conflicts and war.
All right. Ridhima Kedia, thank you very much for getting us all the latest as far as this incident is concerned. In fact, joining me now is Harin Fernando, is a former cabinet minister in Sri Lanka. Mr. Fernando, thank you for speaking with RT India. You know, Sri Lanka has dealt with maritime incidents before, but does this situation, does it feel different given the wider Iran-US conflict that is currently unfolding?
Yes, indeed. I think Sri Lanka has always maintained what we have signed in our treaties when it comes to respecting other nations, respecting when attacking another nation. As to the UN Charter, the Article 51 is what Sri Lankan government has always maintained ourselves and the sovereign rights of the countries and so on and so forth. But as having said that, Sri Lanka is strategically located in a position where the maritime is very busy. There's over 400 ships, cruise ships, vessels, bunkers that travels across this Indian Ocean, across Sri Lanka. So therefore, we are in a very vulnerable situation when such an war takes place, and in our waters, close to our economic zones, it's going to be quite tricky how the Sri Lankan government will deal with it.
Mr. Fernando, from what you're hearing in Colombo, is there concern that commercial shipping that could start avoiding Sri Lankan ports if these tensions in the region escalate?
Well, with the current situation or the final incident that happened with the Iranian ship and a submarine and US taking blame or taking the responsibility of the attack would no doubt put lot of pressure on the vessels that's crossing Sri Lankan waters, because it happened in our waters, it happened in our economic zone, and it's a very strategic location. Sri Lanka is a hub, and we depend on our transshipments, and especially for India, Sri Lanka's business in Colombo port is one of the busiest ports, and it does so much of transshipments back to India. So therefore, this all is very alarming, and I think a diplomatic intervention is definitely needed, just like the airspaces, the waters of Sri Lanka would also be very vulnerable from what happened yesterday.
Mr. Fernando, do you believe that this incident, it was an isolated military event, or could it signal more naval activity in the Indian Ocean in the coming days?
My personal opinion is it's alarming. As I said before, I think Indian Ocean is looking vulnerable at this moment because if a tornado can hit after the Second World War in international waters, and it has to be in the Indian region, Indian Ocean, where Sri Lankan economic zone. Sri Lankan government did exactly the right thing for the distress call. They had to. Whether it's Iran, whether it's US, whether it's Great Britain, any other country, they'll have to respond to it. I think Sri Lanka did exactly that. But my worry is, yes, this is a very busy naval route, and there'll be insurance surcharges going on the vessels. So there'll be a lot of movement that will be restricted, which can trigger an economic collapse in smaller countries like Sri Lanka, which depends on imports, and our fuel to everything that we import might be at a risk.
Mr. Fernando, how closely is the Sri Lankan government coordinating with the regional partners, say, for example, like India and the other Indian Ocean countries after this development?
Well, it's too early. I'm pretty sure the Sri Lankan government currently is in discussion with their counterparts, because this poses a big threat on our region, especially with India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, all of us living very closely together. It sounds very alarming for all of us. So it's an intervention that all the foreign ministers of these countries have to come together, have to unite at this particular point and raise this issue. And also, we always have to go by the treaties we have signed and to respect each other countries' sovereignty, and not to get them involved in somebody else's war.
So does this attack put Sri Lankan ports under a high-risk category, and would it also invite higher surcharge?
Yes, as I said before, that's my biggest worry. Sri Lanka is just getting out of an economic collapse that we've had. Now we have some sort of stability in the country, and we could not risk any catastrophe happening once again in Sri Lanka. A small problem could trigger an economic collapse in Sri Lanka. Surcharges is something that where Sri Lankans' cost of living would go up, the rupee would get depreciated. So there's quite a lot of issues that we will have to currently evaluate, because currently even our tourism, because of the airspace in the Middle East have been closed, have a significant impact on our revenue or on our income onto the country. So therefore, surcharges, meaning the cost of living is going to go high, commodities are going to go high. So therefore, I think Sri Lanka is at great risk, and I'm sure none of the Sri Lankans want to be a part of this mess at the moment.
Mr. Fernando, given that Sri Lanka has traditionally tried to maintain a neutral diplomatic posture, how difficult is it to balance relationship with both Iran and the US during these moments?
Yes, because Iran has been one of our very close allies for Sri Lanka. They have helped Sri Lanka in many ways with water projects, with power projects. Iranians built the biggest oil refinery in Sapugaskanda. Iranians gave us a massive the reservoir, the water project. So therefore, Iran has always been a friend of Sri Lanka. So has United States, because U.S. and Sri Lanka relationship goes back for many, many years before. So has Iran. So we are in a very vulnerable situation. And as I said, I'm in the main opposition. What we really consider ourselves is to go by the UN Charter, Article 51, where it clearly states how countries should act at a point like this, how it should be respected. Therefore, I think where we stand is with the UN Charter, the treaties we have signed, and mutual respect for these countries. We do not want to get dragged into issues like this because Sri Lanka is too small to get into a mess once again.
Mr. Fernando, a final word from you. Looking ahead, what would be Sri Lanka's biggest concern right now? Is it shipping disruption? Is it security risk? Or are we looking at a diplomatic fallout?
I think on a Sri Lankan standpoint, Sri Lanka is more worried mainly because our country is again repositioning ourselves. Tourism is one of our main source of income, and foreign employment, foreign revenue, employment revenue that comes into the country, remittances, is one of our biggest revenues. Those are the top two, if at all, and also our exports of rubber and garments. So all of this, being a country that's dependent on exports, we will be seriously suffering if a war breaks out. And as soon as possible, if things can settle down, that would be Sri Lanka's wish and the prayers. And mainly because based on tourism, as you know, the airspaces are closed. Many of our bookings have got cancelled already. Many of our employees, most number of employees of Sri Lanka, more than 70%, works in the Middle East. If they lose their jobs, that's a huge impact on our economy, as well as if the sea routes, the naval routes, the maritime movements, if it gets restricted, it gets surcharged, well, Sri Lanka is going to have a tough time once again. We're a small population, but we depend on this open economy, the open business, and we need the world to be a safer place, a peaceful place for countries like Sri Lanka to do well.
All right, Mr. Harin Fernando, thank you very much for speaking with RT India.